Hopefully, I don't have to slurp as much in this fucking take as I did in the first time I tried shooting this. And, so, part two of me reviewing the Star Wars movies is The Empire Strikes Back, which has been widely regarded by many as the best Star Wars film. And, of course, the big question for this video would be, do I agree? And, honestly, I would have to see. I would have to think about it for a bit, but I think this movie is probably is the best of the Star Wars series. I think the closest we got to something as good as Empire Strikes Back, closest I could think of, I would probably have to say The Last Jedi because that kind of tried to be like Empire Strikes Back, but did a little bit of its own thing, like a different take on it. So I would not be surprised if I say that and people watching this video, or the few people that watch this video, start going, yeah! But, excuse me? God, I'm just ruining this take. Anyway, so with Empire Strikes Back, one of the major reasons why this movie works is that it doesn't fall into the trap that a lot of other sequels fall into, where it just regurgitates the same story all over again. It actually takes story arcs and character development and personalities from the first film and tries to find a way to move them along in a way that naturally fits the character. For example, Luke is still trying to learn how to be a Jedi, and the bulk of the movie is him training on the swamp planet with Yoda, who turns out to be more of just a short green guy with pointy ears. And Luke also gets challenged emotionally and physically throughout the movie with learning new philosophies, learning how to control the Force, how to be a more rationally minded person, etc. And with Han Solo, you do see him be more selfless. I mean, he is still kind of like the smug, cocky character that he was in the first movie, but he's a little more selfless, and he even is going so far as to commit self-sacrifice at the end to save other people. Get to that a little later. So, and also, this movie does kind of show that, unlike at the end of the first film, where things seem to be a pretty cut and dry kind of happy ending, the Empire is actually winning in this case. And Vader, for some reason, is more obsessed with finding Luke Skywalker, which get to that later. So I do think that another thing that's also impressive about the movie is that, once again, this was made in the time before CGI. That the practical effects look really good. There are a few scenes where the effects look a little bad, but those are usually that's in the first fight scene, the war scene with the AT-AT walkers. You can kind of tell in a few shots that they're walking against a painted background and they're miniatures, but for the most part, the editing and the splicing together of the actors and the effects still works very well. And another thing that's also impressive, I think a lot of reasons why people find the the original trilogy so much better is that, yeah, in the first movie, the dialogue was a little weird, but in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which I'll cover next week, there were two different directors each time. And Empire Strikes Back was actually directed by George Lucas's film professor at USC, Irvin Kershner. And he was basically told by Lucas, if this movie fails, it's the end of Star Wars. So that was kind of a lot of pressure to put on your teacher at this point. But I still think that it really paid off. This is definitely where the dialogue started to feel more natural. And Darth Vader in this movie, I mean, okay, he was a pretty intimidating villain in the first film. This one, he's more violent. I mean, there are a lot of times where some of his underlings make mistakes, and he just chokes them and proceeds to murder them out of anger for screwing up. I mean, in a way, it's kind of funny that you mess up, you die, but it's actually, I mean, like, I think there's a way you could twist it where it could be seen as kind of funny in a spoof, But yeah, Spaceballs did that. But yeah, I mean, this guy is not messing around. I mean, you could definitely tell with the desperation that Vader really wants to get Luke, which leads to the twist. I'm probably going to give away the twist anyway because I'm pretty sure whether you've seen this movie or not, you at least know what the big twist is. But it does kind of make when I saw it as a kid, I already knew what the twist was. Luke being Vader's son, but the more I think about it now, it makes a little more sense why Vader was so hell bent on trying to get Luke and why he was trying to, convert him to the dark side. At first, you just think, well, Luke beat him in the first film with a little help. So Vader's like, hey, if I poach their star player, we win. So it kind of makes a little sense there. And the third act of the movie, there's a lot of great action scenes in this movie. There's a great action scene in the first act with them fighting the AT-AT walkers on the ice planet. There's also the second act where Han and Leia are flying around in the Millennium Falcon trying to get to the rendezvous point, and they're going through an asteroid field to mess up the Imperial Star Destroyers. Then at the end, with a new character, Lando Calrissian, played by the smooth uh, Billy D. Williams. It's kind of interesting because you kind of like Lando, but then you find out he's a backstabber, but then he backstabs the Empire and becomes a good guy again. It's kind of interesting. You could tell he's trying to do what he thinks is right for his planet and the people that he's in charge of. But then when he realizes he's gone too far, he goes against the Empire and tries to redeem himself. And he almost gets killed doing so because, well, Han, as we all know, got frozen in the ice box, and Chewie almost strangles him to death in revenge. Anyway, but I mean, that was actually, I don't know why I facepalm. That's actually a really good scene. And it all leads up to the climactic fight between Vader and Luke. And this, if not for the chokeout scenes, this just shows you how violent Vader can be because there are a lot of scenes where Luke is just getting pelted with metal, heavy objects. He gets thrown out a window, and of course, Vader chops Luke's. I think it's his right hand that he chops off. And when you do the reveal, I mean, I do think that Mark Hamill's reaction to finding out that Vader is actually his dad, he does seem to believe it a little quickly, a little too quickly. I mean, I can understand the shock and the horror on his face, but it's kind of weird how there's never a sense of denial. He just hears it and automatically accepts it as fact. And fun fact, when they were shooting this scene, um, Luke, Mark Hamill, David Prowse, and James Earl Jones, they didn't know about the twist at all. In fact, Irvin Kershner actually didn't say anything until they were shooting this scene. And James Earl Jones, who voiced Vader, is like, okay, he's lying. How are they going to play this out? This can't be right. But there's a lot more on the Vader lore in the other Star Wars movies that I'll get to if I remember. Um, but what I really do like about this movie is that even though the characters do technically lose, there is a little bit of hope at the end with a shot of things getting better. And I think that's the kind of the best way to describe this movie. A fun film, sad ending, but a hopeful future. Um, I think aside from Luke's surprisingly quick acceptance of Vader being his father, I think another thing that does kind of hint at the twist is when Luke fights Vader in the cave on Dagobah. We know it's not really Vader; it's just a figment of Luke's imagination. And Luke decapitates Vader, and then you see the helmet blow up, and Luke's face is in the charred remains of Vader's helmet. So that was kind of, I think the hint was kind of there in that scene alone, if you ignore the opening crawl, but Yeah, I mean it does it kind of adds up a little bit, but when we saw this in 1980, I don't think people really knew what was going on. As someone, I thought it was a dumb idea, but I don't know. I wasn't around in 1980. I was minus 14 when this movie came out, and my parents wouldn't be married for like another 8 years after this movie came out. Um, so yeah, I do think it does a great job at character development. It's a lot more complex and dark than the original movie, and so it's kind of moving into newer, more thought provoking territory. So I definitely say this is definitely the best Star Wars film of the series, and I really don't know what else to say. I think all I can say is that next week I'll be reviewing Return of the Jedi, and I'm pretty sure I'll like that movie a lot more than people, because people seem to complain about that movie being too light. I think I'll probably be a little more forgiving of it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So, uh, on Monday I will do my guitar cover for American Fool, and I'm still trying to figure out what guitar cover I'm going to use to close out May, but all in good time. See ya.